Hello, Duke fans. Welcome in to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast, your daily podcast for all things Duke Blue Devils news. Just like every day, we thank you so much for tuning into the show today to get your latest on the Duke Blue Devils. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. Duke basketball has cemented the #1 overall ranking in the Associated Press top 25 after taking down former #1 team Michigan on Saturday, 68-63. Blue Devils take down the #1 ranked Wolverines at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. in what could very well be the best game of the entire college basketball season and is undoubtedly one of the best wins of the entire college basketball season for the Blue Devils. Wasn't the prettiest game of all time, just a 68-63 tally, but a game that Duke controlled for the majority of the way, and a game that Duke led to happen the way it wanted to happen. Duke leads with its defense, held a Michigan team that averages about 90 points per game to just 63 total points. Michigan was held under 70 points for just the second time all season. And this isn't a shock. This was very expected. But Duke is the new #1 team in the AP poll and the new #1 overall projected seed in the 2026 NCAA tournament. Duke and Michigan weren't the only marquee matchup that came on Saturday. Houston also took on Arizona in a potential Final Four preview. Really, the top four teams in the sport, generally viewed, went against each other on Saturday. And in the updated poll, Duke is the new #1. Arizona is at #2 after taking down Houston on the road 73-66. Another really, really good win. Michigan at #3, Iowa State at #4, and Houston at #5. Duke receives 56 first place votes. It's no shock at all that Duke was going to get to #1. It would have been an utter shock if Duke did not get to #1. But that is how the top 5 of the poll rounded out. Finishing out the top 10 is UConn at 6, I apologize. Florida at 7, Purdue at 8, Gonzaga at 9, and Illinois at 10. So as of now, Duke is generally viewed as the team to beat in college basketball come postseason time. If you check out si.com/college/Duke, I wrote a story on this that will go live today, same day that this podcast goes live. Hard to say if there's really a best quote unquote team in college basketball. Duke, I think at this point, has undoubtedly the best resume in the country, but it's hard to say who the best team is. And really, above all, Duke's win on Saturday just showed that anyone can get beat at any time, and there's no true team kind of above the rest. If Michigan had won that game, I think it'd be pretty fair to say that, everyone would be talking about Michigan in a tier of their own, and then, your other favorites below them. But, Michigan came into that game beating 10 teams on the season by 30 points or more. It was winners of 11 in a row heading into Saturday's heavyweight bout. And was most recently coming off a win at Purdue at Mackey Arena, took down the Boilermakers 91-80 on Tuesday night. Mackey Arena, one of the most difficult places to play in college basketball. And despite an 11-point victory, Michigan looked like the better team for the entirety of the way, and it could have been a much larger margin. But after Duke takes down the Wolverines, it really just shows that, there's so many elite teams in college basketball in this NIL era. The top of the sport is harder to beat because there's so much more opportunity for, mid-major guys or guys at lower programs to get to these elite programs quicker. Duke really didn't utilize the transfer portal very heavily at all this season. If Duke fans remember, had Cedric Coward committed to the program, one of the top guards in the portal out of Washington State. Cedric Coward ultimately opted to remain in the 2025 NBA draft, was a lottery selection, is now having a fantastic rookie season for the Memphis Grizzlies. But Duke really no key contributors out of the portal. It's elite freshmen, the #1 overall 2025 recruiting class, and then key returners. But, back to the NIL era, it's just the top of the sport is so much better than it's ever been because the talent pool is so immense at the top of the sport because the top players are able to get to the top programs if they weren't there originally via the portal easier than ever. So, we saw it in the 2025 NCAA tournament. All 4 1 seeds made the Final Four, which very rarely happens. I believe that was the second time in the modern era where that has happened. And it just feels like there's so many teams this year that can really compete. And it doesn't feel like there are 4 teams. I think the 1 seeds last year, to a lot of people, were far and away the best teams in the country. But when looking down the poll, there feels like so many teams that could really make a run. Iowa State at #4, they're probably not regarded as a 1 seed right now, coming off a loss at BYU 79-69. Somewhat surprised that Houston dropped in the poll below them, but The one projected one seeds in the NCAA tournament, generally still Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and Houston. But you got teams like Iowa State, Florida, Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Arkansas. There's so many teams that feel like they can make a deep run and have the talent, the makeup, and the coaching to do so. So very, very exciting getting ready for the postseason. And I think Duke's win, really above all on a national level, is a good thing for college basketball because it shows that there are a lot of teams that can compete for a true national title and a lot of teams that can make a deep run. But nonetheless, Duke currently the number one team in college basketball and will probably remain that way until it loses. If it does lose, remaining on the schedule, Duke has 4 remaining all winnable games. And then heading into the ACC tournament, it's really difficult to see a team taking down Duke in the ACC tournament. So Duke has a very good chance to remain the number one team in the country and the number one overall projected seed heading in to the NCAA tournament selection Sunday, just over 20 days away. Duke's still the number 2 team in the net. Interestingly enough, did not jump Michigan, which is still the number 1 team in the net, despite a head-to-head victory. Duke is now 25-2 overall on the season, 12-2 in quad 1, 16-2 across the first 2 quadrants, 13-0 at home, 8-1 in true road games, and 4-1 in neutral court games. Both of Duke's losses have come by a combined 4 points. One of those was an 82-81 loss at Madison Square Garden to Texas Tech. That was back in December. And then, as Duke fans know, Duke fell in Chapel Hill 71-68 to North Carolina back in early February off a Seth Trimble buzzer beater 3. But we've talked about it on previous shows. Kind of the one thing on Duke's resume that was lacking, that was keeping Duke from cementing what was probably the best overall resume in college basketball, was the fact that it didn't have a win over a perennial national title contender. Now it does. It has a win over arguably the best team in the sport. There's still 3 or 4 teams that you can make a serious argument as the best team in the sport, despite Duke taking down the number 1 team in the AP poll. So as the net rankings currently stand, Duke has more quadrant 1 victories than any other team in college basketball with 12. Arizona currently has 11. Michigan has 10. Again, the quad rankings, we talked about this on previous shows, they change all the time. Duke's record at 12-2 will probably not remain at 12-2, not considering the games that will obviously play in quadrant 1. But those change all the time, so that is not set in stone at all. But right now, Duke has more quadrant 1 victories than any other team in college basketball. So looking ahead at Duke's remaining schedule, it has 3 quadrant 1 opportunities over its final 4 remaining regular season games as the net rankings currently stand, and it's hard to see any of those switching. Crazy to think that there's only 4 games remaining on the regular season slate for the Blue Devils. What a regular season it has been. Next, Duke will take on Notre Dame in South Bend at 7 p.m. on February 24th. Notre Dame currently at 12-15, overall 3-11 in the ACC, one of the weaker teams, obviously, in the conference and one of the weaker teams in all of Power Conference basketball. Then 2 of Duke's final 3 remaining regular season games after that bout with Notre Dame will be against ranked opponents. Virginia came in at number 11 in the AP poll this week. Duke will take on the Cavaliers at Cameron Indoor Stadium on February 28th. That will be a noon tip-off. That is this coming Saturday. Then Duke will head on the road to take on NC State at 7 p.m. on March 2nd. That will be a very interesting game. Definitely could be a bit of a trap game for the Blue Devils. NC State is riding high towards the end of the season. And then to close out the regular season, obviously, Duke will take on North Carolina, this time back at Cameron Indoor Stadium on March 7th. That will be a 6:30 p.m. tip. North Carolina came in at number 18 in the AP poll. Since the win over Duke in Chapel Hill, North Carolina been at a bit of a crossroads. Granted, Caleb Wilson has been out with injury. Henry Vasar missed some time. But since that win at Duke, the North Carolina is just 2-2, lost at Miami and lost at NC State. That loss to NC State was an 82-58 tally, pretty handled loss. North Carolina has defeated Pitt at home and Syracuse on the road over that stretch. But this past Saturday, Syracuse remained in it for a little while with the Tar Heels. But at the end of the day, Duke is the new number 1 team in the AP poll and is widely considered to be the, team to beat, like we mentioned, really in all the sport. But like we've talked about, there's just so many teams where it feels like they can make a run. Around the ACC, Virginia, like we mentioned, came in at number 11, North Carolina at 18. Louisville is currently number 24 in the AP poll. Those are the other 3 ranked programs out of the ACC currently. Miami received votes. NC State and SMU also received votes out of the ACC. But that is where we currently stand. Duke is the new #1 team in the country. That is going to do it for us here today at the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast. Just like every day, we thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Make sure to check us out at si.com/college/Duke every single day to get your latest on the Duke Blue Devils. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI, and I'll see you tomorrow.